So before getting started, I just want to show that in order to load up my demo scene that I use for all my demo videos with you guys, I will basically rename one of my folders to be A for the 2.92 install. And then I'll make the other folder the 2.92 folder, which means that next time I open Blender, it will actually open up with the blue outline showing that I'm actually using the previous Blender install that I've been using for all the videos. So just letting you know that we're on the same footing here and not using anything special. So the purpose of this video I figured would be a welcome to Boxcity. So I pressed W to exit Boxcutter, and right now we're just in a neutral state. So, you know, quiz time. How do you start Boxcutter? An easy way to find out is by hovering over the icon where it should have said a tooltip for the hotkey. There's actually a hotkey for tweak, but it doesn't appear that there's a hotkey displaying for Boxcutter, so it looks like we may have to add those manually. But for the record, Alt W will allow you to switch between Hops tool and Boxcutter on the fly. So sometimes you may see me using Boxcutter and then just switching over to Hops tool. So the goal of Boxcity is to just, you know, play with Boxcutter and just have fun. So I'm just clicking and dragging on the surface to draw a cut and then tabbing to pause. Now I'm just drawing and pressing B to bevel, you know, just the fundamentals. These are things that you should definitely have an understanding of by now. And also my hotkeys are being displayed in the bottom left corner of the screen. So if that's not assistive, I need to change my settings or get a different keystroke display utility. But for the most part, that should cover the hotkeys when it comes to what I'm doing at this time. So when it comes to Wedge, I found that some users were still having questions about how to activate Wedge. If you are in Box, like I alt scrolled back down to Box, if I am in Box and I want to turn this into a wedge, I just press W during the extrusion process, and that will turn it into a wedge. The interesting thing about W is if you tap to pause, you can also press W to toggle various types of wedges as well as pause it. So if we wanted a longer wedge, we could also go for this. And you might be wondering, what if you want a wedge the other way? Well, that's where rotating it comes in, but really the standard wedge we had was fine, and we just press W to flip that, and we're back good to go. One of the new features that's kind of fun to play with in this version is auto depth. So underneath shape, there's a setting for auto depth, and we'll just turn off wedge and go back to box. And the cool thing about this is that whenever you begin drawing, it will activate all the necessary settings on the fly just during the draw in order to allow this to happen. And if you're deeply familiar with the integrals of Boxcutter, you're well aware that there's a sort of God ray mode that can be activated with release lock and release laser cut lock. Wow, that's a mouthful there. In order to perform the same type of operation, but we made it also a setting that has additional parameters like longest edge analysis for the auto depth calculation. And just over the course of testing, I found this to be really fun and was excited to be releasing it to you guys. In fact, the purpose of Boxcity is just to go over some of the tools of Boxcutter on the test shape of a box. So the next thing I want to showcase is extraction. So let's draw this, and we will cut everything out. So I always start off with a cut box, and then I press Y to switch to an extraction, so that way I know what I'm getting on the inside. Because if we just started off with an extraction, we wouldn't know what we're cutting on the inside. But now we know what we're getting. I don't know, I'm just a little OCD sometimes. So we'll just draw the shape. And the interesting thing about this particular update is that if you hold shift, you can now draw things proportional. However, I always contemplate how we can automatically rotate things on the 90 as well during the drag process, because I often find myself wanting a shape to be 90 degrees of where I extracted it. Just a small thing about the way I work. But for now, in order to rotate it inside, like for example, let's say we want to rotate this shape, we would just rotate it 90, but there's also shift tilde that will rotate the shape inside the bounds of the box formation, but that's a story for another day. So we'll just continue drawing our boxes and just repeating our extraction. We see that it's quite short work to get to Boxcity with Boxcutter nowadays. It's a joke almost. You know, I see people commenting on the old videos and sometimes having a hard time. I have to laugh because we've done everything in our power to make things easier, but our work is of course never done, and so it's always back to the drawing board on how we can make things even more accessible to users. But it looks like our orientation was set to something not local, which allowed me to draw in a strange shape. So I'm going to draw a box here, and we're just going to alt scroll and just recall one of our custom cutters. And it looks like we don't have proportional editing yet, or proportional scaling inside of this mode yet on recall, but I do believe I reported that as a bug and a request. But you know, these things all take time, so no rush. We'll be speaking to you about it in a future update. So I'm shifting this shape to live, and I'm just going to draw a box and cut out what I do not want, which is a bit. And this is our, you know, kind of box metropolis so far. So now we got to get creative about how we got to make this look like something a little less boring, you know. So we could cliche it. We could just cut it with a angular formation, something like this. But I'm thinking something even funner. So let's cancel that. Let's apply everything. So the easiest way to apply everything in BoxCutter is we can just click on Smart Apply, and it will just apply everything and remove the cutters and just do the job. However, if you have modifiers before it, there are some questionable things that I wish that Smart Apply would do. So I have proposed a solution of having Smart Apply from Hops be promoted to BoxCutter on a toggle if Hops is present, as a way of extending our behavior into BoxCutter. And so if you were to click this and it worked Smart Apply instead, which is this thing, I just think that would have a little more visual of an impact for the user experience. But that's just my take. You know, I'm always thinking about how we can improve upon things. So sorry to blab. Let's press Q and sharpen everything, and we will just grab everything that matters. Let's try that again. We want to make sure that we have crease and seam on in the control tilde, and then we sharpen again. And this time we have our marking, so we actually only want this area, and we don't even want this area, so we're gonna have to do stuff. So I'm going to alt scroll from Ngon and jump up to line, and we're just going to cut a line. And I don't know what this was oriented to, but that's a story for another day. But we'll just angle this so, you know, get it almost approximate. And then we can just visual geometry to mesh, which is another way to apply everything super freaking fast. And we will just select these faces using L because they're all isolated by seams. And let's control click on curve extract, which will just give us a new piece from the selection. And you're probably still wondering, hey, what is this guy going to do with this? Well, let's go under modifier and we'll choose solidify. And we want to push it out, but we also only want to push it out on the rim. And let's apply that as well. So we will just visual geometry to mesh, you know, no holds barred today. And we're just grabbing all four of these edges around. We're just going to bevel them in edit mode. You know, we don't care. And this is what we have so far. So nothing major. The next thing is we want to go under mesh tools, and we will just control click dice in order to dice everything on all axes. And after performing the dice, if we press Alt V, we can look at the wireframe and see that everything is nicely diced, something I like to call boxolization. Patent pending. And if we click on cloth, we have our UI come up. And now if you're running the latest version, the UI is able to be moved around thanks to a little handle that I had hidden at the very last minute. On the window, they'll let you move this, and we just click play. And this is what we're looking at so far. So we can actually click on this button to make it start over the simulation every time we change a parameter. And so we'll just scroll through to shrink until we get a little bit of sag in our box. And we'll just click on the checkbox to just apply. So We actually got a lot of sag happening at the bottom. Let's go back under our cloth settings and reduce that sag by a lot. You know, something like that. We need a respectable amount of sag, all right? And so if we press Control 1, we can put a subdivision on it. And we want to make sure our timeline's back at the beginning, because if we put our subdivision first, then whenever this begins playing, it's not going to have the same effect and good look to it. But also, I don't know if I like what happened with these edges on this box. Let's isolate it in local mode and just really take a look at what we have here. And technically we could just reduce the amount that we beveled by grabbing every other loop and just dissolving it. I mean, this is a little hacky, but I don't want my corners looking like that. And also I see these red lines on the edges. Those will also have to go. So let's just select these. And we can actually leave them marked. That part is fine. The part that's not fine is having them marked as a boundary. So by pressing Control G, our active group is already HOPSCutter. So if we just choose to remove from active group, they are done. We go back to the first frame, and if we let this play, now we actually have something a little bit better. However, we may also want to do the same to the bottom, and then just deal with the sag amount. So let's do that. We will just press Control G and just remove from the active group. And now it's all continuous. However, we also probably want to unmark it just to allow the shading to look a little bit better. And we'll be recalculating the shading at the end of this anyways. And we're just letting it play. You know, I want something a little bit more pillow-like. And we'll just pause the simulation. And this is now what we're looking at. So besides the obnoxious seam issues that are happening with the lines, we can press Control A to just quickly apply those. We'll put a new subdivision on it, and I'll take this time to Control Shift click sharpen in order to recalculate. And didn't think about it, but yeah, that's definitely going to take a moment. And we want to turn off auto smooth, and we're good to go. So now we have this box that's just padded out, shaded, you know, gave it a little bit of work, but a little bit of polish is always fine. I see that we're only 12 minutes into this video, and that's because of HOPSCutter just taking up the show. But we will press D, switch over to Ngon, and instead of cutting a panel line, we'll press C to just get out of that. C is for non-cyclic whenever you're using Ngon. And we're just going to cut out some areas, and then we could shift click sharpen to quickly fix the shading. That's something I feel that I neglect to go over in videos for beginners, is how I shift click sharpen all the time in the Q menu in order to have a modal I can roll and quickly adjust my shading. And it's literally the fastest way to adjust shading that we have come up with so far. So I am proud of all parties involved. Anyways, we'll select the main shape. And let's just control click bevel, and we have bevel just really giving us the business. And this is where we can actually get in and talk about bevel in depth. For I truly love bevel. In fact, one of the core tenets of HardOps is bevel awareness. So let's actually C-sharp this by control clicking sharpen, which will just apply all the bevels. And let's just select everything and just separate by loose parts. And so with this piece, we are just going to lower the bevel width. And where did we hurt you? Mesh. Where did we hurt you? Well, we see that our bevel width isn't really catching these things right. So we'll bring up bevel under the Q menu and just alt scroll down to adjust the angle. And we see that things are letting us get a little bit farther. However, this particular cut is not. So this is one of my favorite stages. Like, I spend a lot of time troubleshooting meshes just to try to understand the types of issues that customers will run into. Not to say that you know, I'm not troubleshooting for myself as well, but I like to put myself in hypothetical situations just to see how you would get yourself out, because, you know, modeling is like Sudoku. I think I've always said that. And in fact, let's turn on view align, because I don't have time for whatever nonsense was happening there. And we're just performing cuts and dissolving diagonals, which is a type of game you can play when it comes to getting your mesh to look better. I mean, we could slap a weighted normal on this, and that would begin to hide these black eyes. I was about to say these black eyes, but instead we want to just clean it up as much as we can before all of that. And we see that we're able to get quite a bit of flexibility. And there's a video about knife called Two Knives that basically discusses how there's two knives inside of BoxCutter. There is, Blender's knife intersect algorithm as part of its edit mode booleans. I mean, all of our tools are based off of the greatness that is Blender, always. But the one that I'm utilizing right now is actually based off of Knife Project, which is one of my favorite ways to perform a knife in Blender utilizing two meshes. So this system is basically using a box, or hopefully a plane on a technical level, as a shape for just performing knife cuts. And if you think of things like boxes, you can really get in and work them out. I mean, of course, we're just playing with the box in this example, and voila, now this shape is looking better. Let's take it in local mode, and because of our work, we can actually give it a little more bevel. We can give it this much bevel now. But what if we want to give it more? Well, let's grab these, press G, Y, move those out. Let's grab this face, and this area is just a misdriver. It's like I always think about burnout when I look at this sort of geometry, like a near crash right here, near crash. So we'll just merge it, just make our day a little easier. I mean, if you see an issue that's just so minor, so small, and it's just right in front of your face, why not just clean it up? Just push an edge or two. That's going to come back to haunt us. So let's actually push that back in, because we have other pieces we need to solve. But now we have bevel at a rather large width, and there's still some areas that may require that we move things to accommodate this bevel size. And accidentally clicked and dragged, which triggered BoxCutter. That's a game in itself, using BoxCutter in edit mode without triggering BoxCutter itself while doing operations. We've done a lot of work to try to improve things in that regard, but there's always, of course, more work to be done. I mean, you pick up a tool, it's a lifetime contract, unless you don't care, and then it's not a lifetime contract. But that's my problem. I care. So we'll just grab this piece, move it, just some obvious stuff, little housekeeping. I was just really just wilding out with some of these cuts. We could also make it where we don't see the bevel in edit mode, which will make things a little more sane. And you can see these skewed edges. And we could have actually done preparatory work to prevent these things from happening, but you live and you learn, right? So we're just going to perform a knife cut. And notice that I'm in local mode. Not all of our cutters support local mode because of the weirdness that is local mode. But today, that was a repeat. But today, I'm fortunate that we were able to support it with this workflow, because it's really nice to be able to focus in and perform cuts, isn't it? So we will just go in and perform another cut, doing more relaxation, resolving spirits of dead geometry that never got to see its resolution. We could move these faces forward just a little bit by just grabbing them in edit mode. And this area is so questionable. Also received an email. Always receiving emails. In fact, when did such things happen? When did that happen? Who did that belong to? How do we fix such a thing? I'm just going to snap this on the Y to here and we're going to snap this on the X to here, snap it on the Z to here, and that looks a lot better, sort of, except let's look at this in wire mode, and we see that we could do better. We'll just snap things here. I'm not sure what happened there. It's life. You just gotta roll with the punches, but now everything is looking a lot better, and we are able to move on to the next piece. So, you know, it's not even necessary to solve it. We could be lowering the bevel width, but sometimes I have an attitude where I'm like, you know what? I want what I want, and I want to know why I can't have it. And so, you know, improving your understanding with booleans and bevels is, you know, key to having a faster workflow in general. I mean, you think you could just keep working while ignoring this stuff, but eventually it catches up to you in the way that we're looking at it right here. You know, I did all these cuts willy-nilly, just having a good old time, you know, not thinking about the poor planes and surfaces I was destroying. Also, we can roll bevel back a little bit, and it looks like that's not helping either. So let's get to cleaning. D, switch to box, knife, knifey knife, solve some strife, perform a cut here, which now relieves this area. You know, every box formation or cut in a surface is going to require boundary edges. So all we're doing is replacing these boundary edges with things that won't collide with the bevel modifier. In fact, that edge is completely unnecessary. And I'm pretty sure we have the ability to also cut with just straight lines in BoxCutter. I'm just not even thinking about it right now. And so with that, we're done. We just move on. So we haven't even gotten to the weighted normal stage. I just want to show that, you know, this stuff is understandable when it happens, and it's solvable, and you don't have to live with it. So let's turn off edit mode visualization of bevel and just get to work. Just some old classic Boxcity, right? And cleanup is just par for the course. I mean, we could keep things live and attempt to modify the cutters in order to cut in geometry that doesn't have such issues, which is very well a possibility. I mean, not in this video, but in general it could be done. But I wanted to just you know, take something to Boxcity and also do some troubleshooting in the process, so that way it could be shown that, you know, issues happen and there's a way through them. And just like that, we're done. I mean, I can't even give a very long motivational speech while fixing geometry because it will just solve so fast. I'm going to select that area with Control and just move that in slightly. And we're just going to grab this loop and bring it back and take this piece, bring it out. And we also have to do some stuff to this side. And I'm just alt grabbing this loop because it's all quads. You know, thank the Lord. We just get lucky in that case. So here we're looking at the top and we still have a dirty little skew. So let's press Alt V, look at it through wireframe and not face orientation. Alright, might be this one. So we're just going to experiment with moving it down. Maybe deselecting that one. Just a fine line right there, and I'm willing to ride it. So let's press Alt V. We're back to wireframe, and here we are looking at our final result. And like I said, we could have taken a lot of shortcuts to get here. However, you know, I hate seeing bevel artifacts in close-ups, and it's always avoidable by just you know, taking a good look at your surface. And so we just want to make sure that we're always presenting even our boxes in their best light. So let's make a couple of selections here. Let's give these blank materials, maybe not unique blank materials like we're seeing here. We'll turn off unique. So maybe this piece also deserves its own material. We'll give it a blank material. And let's just look at what we have in look dev. So far, this is what our nonsense has amounted to. We'll press Alt M and we'll shift click material scroll to just begin scrolling through infinite possibilities in the multiverse of material making with the principal shader based on some select parameters that we've locked in. And this one looks good, nice dark gray. And we'll just lower the, well, we actually want to turn off the metalness of this, which in turn will make us need to bring down the brightness, and then we can get in and adjust the roughness ourselves, get something more rounded, and then activate clear coat, and then something like that will be a very nice looking bag. And so selecting everything, we could just press QOT and just bring in a box, but let's change it to a plane. I'm going to control scroll in order to change what face this plane will spawn on, and I'll press S80. And this is something I do all the time. This is like my favorite tool test, basically, that we call Boxcity, where I just go in, make a quick model of a box, detail it up, and just run through all of the tools in a quick little motion. And it looks like we might even finish with an acceptable time. So I'm going to select the plane and then press Alt-A to deselect, and that will allow me to press Q and choose Add Camera. So now we've added our camera to the scene. And we could even press F9 to change this from any type of camera. We can make it a bounce camera. We could give it 3 bounces if we wanted. But I'm going to also press Q, go under settings, and we're going to click on this button called frame range. And this will actually let you set how many frames you have in your scene. But the default will make you have 6,000 frames, which is just good for having a very long camera pen of a rotation of a cube, if you're that type of guy. Just something able to be admired about it. So we're just going to bring this in, and we're just still getting started. So let's press Alt VV and find our render environment that really lets this thing shine. And I actually only have like 5 environments, so we're on the same footing here, guys. We're both playing with the defaults. Except I'm going to press R to make this set the render to this as well. And what this means is that now we've configured our render based off of look dev. One of my favorite features in HardOps, might I add. The other thing is, you know, we could select this and we have a subdivision on it, but we could also hit it with a smooth and just start rolling the wheel, shift scroll to move it up in the stack. And we could actually smooth this out, you know, depending on how much extra detail we want or don't want. You know, we might want to give it a click or two just to kind of relax what we're seeing in some of these areas that might be artifacting. But now that we have our render scene set up, we can now press Alt-V-B, and that will let us use blank light, which is another one of my favorite features. In fact, a lot of these things are my favorite features because, you know, I'd longed for them and asked for them over a period of time. It's like, you know, it'd be so nice to be able to just help this aspect of the journey to Boxcity. So what you're seeing is, you know, the culmination of all that work, but with the goal of us getting you all the way to Boxcity without a whole lot of rigmarole or difficulty, to just have fun using Blender and taking it on an adventure, just playing it like a game, playing Blender like a fiddle. So now I'm pressing Shift Spacebar in order to play my timeline, and we're just going through and looking at our result. In fact, I can select the camera empty and we can scale it in and do things like that. In fact, you know, I'll let it roll, maybe let it get up to like frame 200, and then we'll click this button for keyframing. We'll press I, scale, and let's bring it to about this point and just bring the camera up close because so much work has been put into it. And we'll scale the camera in a little bit more. And from here we can begin pulling back. In fact, we need to make our timeline a little bit bigger so we can see what's going on. So we got this moment where we're going to zoom in, and then about here we're going to be zoomed back out. But we probably want this to take place over a longer period of time. But we want these two to maybe take place over a shorter period of time. So if we let our timeline play, we can now just take a look at our result. I mean, Boxcity has always been just a little dose of randomness to just showcase some of the fundamentals of BoxCutter in a fun setting. You know, not to encompass every aspect of the tool, which is something that I have fun trying to do in my free time, but a way to just let users experience BoxCutter in a constrained demonstration without a whole lot of additional overhead. Because the fundamentals that are taught here are things that you can take forth with you into, you know, the next level, which is a spherical. A spherical is just you cutting a spherical shape while attempting to keep the spherical shape, but cutting into it. So you have to, you know, use a more plating-based workflow versus us using a negative subtractive box-based workflow. And so you can still get creative in those cases. However, you know, with the goal being to plate things in a specific angle at multiple angles, you do have to you know, take those things into consideration. But with that, I'll wrap up this video, and I thank everyone for watching. I'll see you guys next time.